group. We have Charles Maynes, Sound Effects Recordist extraordinaire and sound designer, and my old pal Eric Potter, whom I worked with for many years.
Ahoy!
Many years.
Happy to be aboard this maiden voyage.
Thank you. And Eric, let me again compliment you on the amazing background that you are coming to us.
I found that picture on the internet. Somebody's really cool studio.
He's lying. He's lying.
Yeah.
He has all that crap. So Charles, how did you get into this madness?
Music. I mean, actually, Eric and I are both musicians, even
Yes.
now, or at least we try to be. So yeah, I mean, basically getting into audio in general was through music. You know, it's like being in bands and then getting a degree in sound recording in community college and TV production and journalism kind of led me into, you know, trying to get into studios and stuff. And, you know, that's really how I got my entrance.
Unlike Charles, I wasn't originally a musician in terms of doing sound work. I hadn't really been playing in bands or anything yet, but I had been interested in sound and recording since I was really quite young.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad worked in an office, and they had the dictaphone machines, and they were portable voice recorders. It would record on a magnetic band, like maybe 3 inches wide.
Wow.
And a very curious medium, and strictly intended for voice transcription, you know, of dictating a letter or something. But I was fascinated by this dictaphone recorder that he would use. He would come home at night and do his homework for work, dictating things that were going to be typed out the next day. He's on the sofa in my living room, our living room. I'm trying to watch TV or something. He's like, "Can you turn that down? I got to do my thing." And he's reading. And I asked him about the dictaphone, and I became fascinated with essentially location recording or field recording, you know, and I started recording the television. I recorded our dog. I recorded anything I could find, and had no idea that would be useful to anyone, you know, just entertaining myself.
It was the best time. It really was. I started just shortly after you, around that same time. 88, 89, around in there.
But thankfully, it was a boom time, you know, where in the 90s, you know, they were making a lot of movies, and sound was becoming a big deal. Theaters were getting good sound systems, playback systems. But now you could really, you know, directors and producers were interested in developing, you know, sophisticated soundtracks.
Absolutely. Yeah. The revolution had really started like in the mid 70s, but just in that time, everybody was getting comfortable with it. And with Dolby and digital and all that, you could put so much more detail into the soundtracks. And, you know, they needed, you know, guys like you to go out and start recording fresh things for all that detail. But Eric, you were in the library with me for a while. And then I think I kind of sort of took over the library, and you started doing more field recording and that sort of thing. How did that, I think Edward Scissorhands was the first one you did?
Maybe Edward Scissorhands. Well, the very first film that I recorded for was actually Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, that's right. Richard Anderson did the restoration of Lawrence of Arabia.
Wow.
That's right. And it was kind of a fluke. I was literally, I guess it was just before you got there.
Yeah.
And I was just starting out. And I was having so much fun in the library, I would stay late. You know, I was like, why
we
go
all
home?
did.
Yeah, I had this cruddy, hot apartment. And here I am in this air-conditioned sound library with thousands of reels of tape.
We were always listening to stuff. We always had something going in our office. Yeah. Well, this is a webinar to have later, but the library was a magical place.
As a result, because I was there late, and Richard Anderson, one of the partners, and who was the supervising sound editor for the restoration of Lawrence of Arabia, he called in hoping somebody was in the shop, and I picked up the phone, and we hadn't even met yet. I'd been there for like 2 weeks. And he was on the mix stage with David Lean that whole time.
Right.
And oh, this is Eric, and he knew. Oh, you're the new guy. I'm like, yes. You know how to work a Nagra? And I was like, sure. Actually, I did.
Why not?
Yeah, I had done some production work just before that in Boston, and I was like, yeah, actually, I can run a Nagra. And so they needed to add some new sound from deleted scenes, and they didn't have the original sound. It's that classic sound of the lieutenant, the obsessive lieutenant, and he's always sort of stomping his boot and saluting, every time. So there was a scene in a hallway where he did that, and this was a restored scene that they put back in, and they didn't have the production sound of the stomping boot. And so I got some boots, and Richard Anderson had the brilliant idea of going over to Goldwyn Sound, which would become, the West Hollywood studio facility. Because
the Hollywood Sound Museum actually has an office there right now.
That's exactly, that's where you're based now with the office.
Yeah.
So those editing hallways, they're probably still like that, just like a hard linoleum kind of floor, a hard floor with an echoey hallway. And that's exactly was the setting of this shot, with the lieutenant saluting and stomping his boot. And so my first sound effect was actually, thanks to Richard Anderson, it was actually very sophisticated. It exploited the ambience of the hall. It wasn't just a dry Foley style smack. And so I learned right away the importance of that,
putting a little bit of room on something.
And, I mean, I'm working on SEAL Team, and well, I don't know how it's going to be for this season, but up until now, since I've done 3 seasons with them, I have access to literally every single set and location that we shoot at. So it's like, if I need to do, the military base thing, or the C-17 set, which is actually a real sounding C-17 interior.
Wow.
I just go and bring a recorder and set up mics and do whatever I need to do, and then go and cut it in. And it's like, okay, that would have taken me forever to get the right sound out of the library. And chances are the Foley team wouldn't have had access to the surfaces or the time to really monkey with it. And, it's just like, this is really cool. And, even with effects, you have that same thing where, it's like, if you can, record something, especially like a gun or an explosion in a space that, makes it sound like a movie sound effect, that's a huge, huge boon. I mean, I know, Gary Rydstrom is really a big fan of, those kind of, acoustic sounding, or, like really natural sounding recordings versus it, being something you kind of put together in the editorial phase so much.
Yeah, and it's still very dry and very manufactured kind of.
Right, right. So, I mean, I think that there is, a real authenticity. I don't know.
Talking about worldizing and recording and all this inventiveness, one of my favorite films that you worked on, Mystery Men.
Oh, geez.
I know.
That was quite an adventure. That was
Steve Flick. Fun. But you did this wonderful thing. It's, synth effects are always really tricky because they're always very dry, coming, line in from a synthesizer. But you had this ingenious idea, sort of involving worldizing, to make them more of the real world. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, no, that was actually a really cool one, and it was one where we didn't know which direction to take, and it's like, I one of my biggest influences was the Treg Brown whole
he's
Warner
a genius.
Brothers experience. Yeah,
I mean, it's like genius.
I mean, he defined my childhood. I mean, it was crazy. So it's like, I didn't know what it was when I was younger. I mean, actually, I don't think I found out what it was until I was here.
Yeah.
But it was like, I thought, an inertia starter type effect, would be really a great place to,
to start for that. Yeah.
Try to go for.
Really quickly for our audience, Treg Brown was the genius at Warner Brothers who made all those crazy cartoon sounds. But he was, unlike Jimmy McDonald at Disney, who would make a prop for a sound effect, Treg would find a recording of a real thing in the real world and juxtapose it into the cartoon world. Right. And an inertia starter is like one of those motors that, takes a while to ramp up and it excels. And then they start an engine for whatever it is, a plane or whatever it is. But it's that ramping up sound. And he found a way. He found a way to extend it by cutting it into itself over and over, so it's always accelerating.
Right.
And that's like the Tasmanian Devil. That's what he was.
Yeah,
Anyway.
well, the Tasmanian Devil was exactly the effect that I thought would be, kind of a good starting point. So, I was using samplers back then, and I was able to kind of generate a sound that had that quality. It didn't have the ramp built into it, but I knew that, I can manipulate the pitch independently, and by will with the pitch bend wheel or whatever on the keyboard. And I thought, okay, well, that's all good, but it's going to sound totally fake. So, it's like, that's not going to work because of the universe of that film. It's got this weird retro vibe to it. So what I did was basically brought into my room a trim bin, and then just started putting a bunch of junk in it. A
trim bin, for all of you who don't know, it's an artifact from the old editing days. It's a big metal bin that they used to have a rod over it with hooks so that you could have film clips for editors. If you were editing, you had a section of film, you put it in the clip and it's collected in this big metal trim bin.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. And they're really kind of almost a little flimsy, so they're very resonant, and
they were so cheap.
They're hollow.
Yeah, they're hollow. So cheap. Yeah, it's like, I mean, all of the Christie's stuff was, it seemed like, they should have just coated everything with Bakelite, because it was like, oh yeah, we need to make this all look like it came from 1946.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, basically I got that. I put a bunch of split reels and whatever other metal junk I could find, even plastic stuff.
To reverberate in the thing, yeah.
Well, to vibrate.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, the whole idea was, to put a bunch of crap in the bin and then put a speaker on top of it, and then push the synthesizer sound through the speaker and then record the bin. And it did exactly what I was anticipating it would. It's like you'd be recording the thing, and you do pitch changes and the different resonant frequencies inside with all the crap inside would.
So you can control the frequencies of the sound while you were recording this thing.
Right.
That's great.
We never caused trouble on even the cheapest of cars unless we state that as the goal up front. And Steve Lee, you could probably remember some
yeah. Mm-hmm.
On the other side of that,
Eric Potter, when we were working together, there were some rental organizations that would not rent Eric.
That's not true. People were fond of saying that, but I've never been banned from any automotive rental agency.
Well, I came close a few times, I think.
Back then, we had Rent-A-Wreck. And
that's right.
Right.
Over there on Pico, yeah.
You would go to Rent-A-Wreck, and they, it's a wreck. And
but then we would do more. We would like pull spark plugs and do all these different things, and some people would want to drill holes in the muffler and things like that.
Probably the granddaddy you remember well is the. And what movie was it?
I know what you're going to say. The Valiant Valiant.
Yes. The Valiant.
Yeah, the Valiant.
Something happens, like they drive over the parking spikes. The scene I'm thinking of, I wish I could remember the film, is they end up with two flat tires completely shredded to where the tires are gone. They're off the rim. And that was kind of the visual gag, was they're driving on bare rims. And that just was not in it wasn't in our library. Richard Anderson may have called around. You got anything on? Nobody had anything car driving on bare rims. So we rented the Rent-A-Wreck, but I took good measures. I went to the used tire and wheel place. I bought 2 steel rims, and we went out to the desert, and with 2 jacks, we jacked the car up and removed the tire and wheel and put the bare rims on, and drove it on an old crumbly street that nobody cared about. So you take some
precautions,
some measures, so that
what was
we put the car back together and bring it back, and everything's fine.
Our transfer guy Dave Moreno, do you remember the car that he had, the cop car?
He had the Dodge Diplomat, the 90s Dodge Diplomat, which was a common police vehicle.
Well, I remember a story. I don't know if it was you or Ezra Dweck, the other recordist there at the time that was also in the library. But there was some pickup. Yeah, there was some pickup you needed, some extra sound effect you needed from like a cop car, some specific maneuver. And it was like a really intense maneuver. And one of you guys, either you or Ezra, just went to Dave when he was just a little too busy to realize what was going on. Hey, Dave, can I borrow the keys to your car?
Oh, because the Weddington parking lot was notoriously overstuffed.
Yeah.
And we were always moving each other's cars. Oh,
that's right.
I'm in the middle of a cut. You move my car.
So you guys take David's keys and you go out and record this ridiculous maneuver. And then you hand the tape, you have to hand the tape back to Dave because he's our transfer guy. So he hears this car maneuver, and after a few seconds, he's, wait a second.
Oh, geez. That's great.
That's my car. that did happen.
It did happen. It absolutely
That's awesome.
happened.